Who actually needs a 3 HP shaper in their garage? If you're cutting a lot of raised panel doors, making custom crown molding, or running long glue joints on cabinetry, this thing will save you hours. But if you're mostly doing shelf pins and pocket holes, it's overkill and the price tag will make you second-guess every project. Before you click buy, let's talk about where this machine shines and where it quietly costs you more than you expect. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The headline says 3 HP, but what that really means is you can push a 1-inch cutter through hard maple without bogging down. I've seen guys run 3/4-inch bits on oak for hours straight and the motor never blinked. That's the kind of headroom you want when you're not babysitting the machine every 2 minutes. The spindle travel is generous too. You can sneak up on a cut in tiny increments without having to reset the fence every time. If you're doing anything larger than a 1x2 strip, that travel saves you from wrestling the workpiece. Now, the miter gauge is heavy duty, but don't assume it's perfect. It's square out of the box, but if you're ripping long boards or cutting at an angle, you'll still want to double check with a square after the first pass. The fence is solid, but it's not micro-adjustable like on some premium models. You turn the crank, it moves, and it's close enough for most jobs. If you're building 16th of an inch precision frames every week, you'll notice the difference. For everyone else, it's fine. The real trade-off shows up when you start setting up for anything beyond a straight pass. Swapping bits means removing the table insert, loosening the spindle lock, and wrestling the arbor nut, all while keeping the dust port hose out of the way. It's not rocket science, but it's not one-hand easy either. And if you're used to a router table where you just lift the motor and swap collets, this feels clunky by comparison. The optional W1702 adapter lets you use a 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch router bits, which is handy if you already own a set, but the clearance isn't as clean as a dedicated router lift. You'll lose a little bit of control on fine detail work. Table height adjusts with a crank on the right side, and it's smooth once you get the right gear ratio dialed in. But the crank is on the same side as the fence, so if you're standing in front of the machine making fine adjustments, you're constantly reaching around the fence. It's a small thing, but after an hour of setup, your shoulder remembers it. The maximum cutter diameter is 1 1/8 inches, which covers most raised panel bits, but if you're into large Roman ogee profiles, you'll hit the limit fast. Where this machine earns its keep is in production work. If you're making 20 identical cabinet doors in a weekend, the shaper will outpace a router every time. The heavy cast iron table and sturdy fence keep vibration down, so your cuts stay consistent across long runs. But if you're only doing weekend projects, the learning curve and setup time might not justify the cost. You'll spend more time dialing in the cut than actually cutting. The dust port is 2.5 inches, which is standard, but the hose connection sits low on the back. If your shop vac hose is rigid or you're using a small shop vac, you'll fight suction on the left side of the table. Most guys end up adding a short flexible hose just to keep the dust from drifting onto the floor. It's not a deal breaker, but it's one more thing to tweak. So who should buy this? If you're building doors, drawers, or custom trim regularly, this is the tool that turns a 2-hour job into a 30-minute job. If you're a hobbyist who occasionally makes a picture frame, you'll use it twice a year and wonder why you didn't just stick with the router. The price is steep, but when you compare it to the cost of outsourcing raised panel work or buying a dedicated shaper just to use it once a month, the math starts to make sense. If you're on the fence, ask yourself how many times you've wished your router could handle a bigger cut without burning, or how often you've had to glue up panels because your bits weren't up to the job. That's where this machine pays for itself. But if your shop is already crowded with tools you barely use, this might be one to skip. Before you decide, check the link in the description and make sure the footprint fits your space. Once you set it up, you won't go back to struggling with undersized bits or weak motors. It's not for everyone, but for the right person, it's the difference between making do and making it.